The Atlantic 10 men's basketball tournament was scheduled to tip off Thursday at noon inside Barclays Center. Just 2 minutes prior to that, though, we got word that would not be happening. The A10 tournament canceled. A 5-day tournament reduced to just 1 day. The A10 tournament canceled before it began on this Thursday, as you see the empty scenes inside Barclays Center. A10 not alone, not the first to cancel their tournament, but they certainly were not alone. All the conferences listed on your screen canceled their tournament. Still a couple outstanding as of about 2 p.m. Eastern when we are recording this right now. Still a couple conferences that plan to play, but that could change as well. In studio, Ahmed Freed here, Blaine Fowler, Rob Doster. We were all sitting here, ready to start the tournament, ready to begin. It was 2 minutes from tip between UMass and VCU, and then we found out the tournament was canceled. I'm not going to say we were surprised, but it still was a shocking moment, Blaine.
Well, we all said, we were talking last night with the news of Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, and then we heard about Donovan Mitchell this morning with the Jazz also testing positive coronavirus, and the NBA putting a pause on their season for the foreseeable future. So we thought today might end differently than it started, but we had no idea when those changes would take place. And we prepared as if we were going to do games. And we showed up in here, and next thing you know, the players were taken off the floor and the tournament was canceled. It was a little bit of a surreal feel here in the studio, and I'm certain even more surreal as we visited with our colleagues on the floor at the Barclays Center.
It was just amazing how quick all of that went. You know, it was 15 minutes before we were supposed to go live on air that we found out the American was getting canceled. Then we found out the Big Ten tournament was getting canceled, and it just kind of snowballed. And eventually, right before we were supposed to tip off and broadcast UMass against VCU, we found out that the Atlantic tournament is not happening. And you know, we saw pictures of it before. You know, Matt McCall getting pulled off of the court and telling his team that they're not playing. It's just it's surreal that it has gotten to this point. It's surreal that it took so long for them to make this decision. It's just I think that's the only way to really explain this day.
What was the tipping point? The commissioners were asked that. What was the tipping point with all these cancellations? And it seems like just once one conference does it, the NBA suspends their season, it is inevitable for all the other conferences.
Yeah, I think one person had to go, and then the dominoes were going to fall. And when you and I, Rob, were talking in the back, as soon as the AAC and the Big Ten went, we went, okay, here we go, right? And so we knew that it would probably compound in many conferences, and now almost all conferences would go that direction. And everybody's erring on the side of safety here. You know, basketball is important. It's part of our culture, but we keep hearing about social distancing. We're hearing about avoiding large crowds. Basketball is a game where there is no social distance, right? And so we knew that something would have to be done. We don't know enough about this virus. As we find out more, we may find out on the other end that this was an overreaction, but you'd rather be safe and find out it's an overreaction on the back end of this thing than to be on the wrong side of history, Rob.
There's no answer that anybody has given for what you do when you find out a player in the middle of a tournament tests positive. You don't know, are you going to quarantine his team? Are you going to quarantine all the teams that they play? What happens if, you know, we saw Creighton and St. John's play? What happens if someone on St. John's tests positive for the coronavirus while Creighton is in the middle of their first and second game in the NCAA tournament? What do you do? And nobody has given a good answer for that. And unless you have a good answer, you cannot play these tournaments.
Yeah, wait and see what happens with the NCAA tournament. But when you guys came into this building today, you did not expect to be spending an hour and a half on the air talking about the cancellation of a tournament because of a global pandemic, but that's exactly what you did. Great job. Blaine Fowler, Rob Doster, breaking it down for us. And they are breaking apart the court at the Barclays Center. The A10 tournament in 2020, nothing like it. The 5-day tournament turned into just a 1-day tournament, canceled in Brooklyn.